2018 BMW K 1600B, first ride. The BMW K 1600B is, in an overall sense, one of the best bikes I've ever ridden. Maybe even the best bike. It's worth pointing that out from the get-go because a certain part of this review is going to seem like criticism. Whether it actually is criticism, though, really depends on your perspective. I personally struggle to fully understand who will end up buying this bike. But if a person can get past the mental hurdles in stumbling over, he or she will be left with a damn fine machine. The K 1600B was introduced at Intimate last year as an outright, transparent attempt to capitalize on the North American fascination with baggers. Whereas Europe has gone loopy for BMW SR 1200 GS platform, placing it in the continent's top sales slot for several years running. The boys and girls of bearish motor and work have always struggled to offer a model that so fully captures the hearts and minds of American riders. Remember the R1200C? That was a stinker. Balloonish and detuned to offer considerably less power than other R1200 models of the time, it suggested BMW didn't quite get American customers. No such silliness this time round. The K 1600BS 1649cc inline-6 produces a walloping 160 horsepower, 118 kW, and 129 pounds-foot, 175 New Mexico of torque. Thoughts get in close to Busa numbers, son, while looking a hell of a lot cooler and providing an infinitely more comfortable ride. The K 1600B is the sort of bike that grabs and holds your attention from a distance. BMW chose to launch this gorgeous beast in the Blue Ridge Mountains, having us slum it at the Biltmore estate for the few days surrounding August's total eclipse. My room faced the area where bikes were parked each morning before our rides. I often got lost standing at my window, taking in the image of them lined up in the morning mist. Up close, the bike pulls you in even more. That handlebar is weird, it's just weird. It looks like it came from a different bike from a different manufacturer. But the rest of the lines flow well. You've got that enormous K 1600 fairing up front, a blacked out view of the bike's gargantuan power plant, a stylish looking seat, panniers that feel integral to the bike's aesthetic, and exhaust cans that, as Lemmy pointed out over at Common Thread, are almost big enough to stuff a man's head into. This unrepentant bigness speaks to the baggery thoughts, suggesting BMW partially understands the market it is aiming for. The bike cuts a particularly attractive figure from the rear, offering the sort of sharp lines I always appreciated in the Victory cross-country whip. The full frontal view is very BMW, which says cop bike to me, but thought's not always a bad thing if you're the sort of person who chooses to filter in traffic. Throw a leg over and the seat is initially comfy. At 29.5 inches 750 millimeters, the seat height makes the ergonomics just a little squished for my 6'1" frame, but not so much that I ever bothered to adjust it. Had I been inclined, I could have easily lifted the seat to 30.7 inches 780 millimeters. Both those seat heights are greater than anything you'll find on an Indian or Harley bagger, but, of course, the riding position here is different. The K 1600B puts your feet back a little, angling the rider into a classic standard motorcycle pose. There aren't any controls on those big floorboards. They're for the open road. Press the starter keyless ignition, pops, and you bring to life the thing that makes the K 1600B such a kick-ass bike, that engine. I'll admit to you that I had never before experienced the joy of an inline-6, and within just a few minutes on this BMW was fully converted. For those of you who remain uninitiated, the inline-6 experience is similar to that of a triple, but you know, more, and more is good. Really good. You get strong pulling power and low revs and useful engine braking going into corners with turbine-like smoothness at highway and above speeds. Mix this with an intoxicating amount of power, thoughts far in excess of anything you'll ever need or possibly even be able to use, and it creates a feeling that will hit you again and again, ride after ride, in which you'll suddenly exclaim, "Damn it, I love this motorcycle." The layman might not guess how powerful the K 1600B is, however, because its exhaust note is very much 4 Euro compliant. BMW says some Akrapovic pipes will be available as accessory items, which may help. But for the most part you will have to resolve yourself to being the only one who really knows what kind of monster you're sitting on. The bike's ride-by-wire throttling is a little bit of an issue when trying to maintain steady low speeds. I noticed real problems when engine braking down a hill, just barely putting in throttle. The bike was jerky to the point of my wondering if the traction control was acting up. Things are fine once you give it a little more, so I guess the takeaway message is this bagger won't enjoy being part of those Daytona/Sturgis Main Street parades. You won't enjoy it either, because at crawling speeds the engine can get pretty hot. Possibly too hot. Though, I had a long conversation with a number of my fellow motojournos about whether the heat is an actual problem. It may be that my years of living in rainy, cold Britain have made me soft. I will let you know that among myself, Lemmy, Morgan Gales I hope Bonnier are paying him a lot because he writes for about half a dozen titles, and John Longston, I was the one bitching the most. Lemmy correctly points out that the K1600B is a damned motorcycle, and an inherent part of that experience is that you're sitting on top of a metal box of explosions. Of course it's going to be hot. Especially if you were riding through North Carolina in August. The big Beamer's transmission is plenty smooth. My only complaints came when I tried to use the Gear Shift Assist Pro feature that had been added to all the press bikes. That is a waste of money in my opinion. Use that $475 to instead buy one of the cool leather jackets that BMW has put out in conjunction with the bike. For all intents and purposes, the K1600B is just a K1600 GT thought's been lowered a few inches, which means it has all kinds of sex through corners. Push hard and you will touch down feelers hidden beneath the floorboards, at which point you will want to straighten up immediately, because the next thing to touch are crash bars, but you really do have to push hard. Like, hard enough that some guy waves a shotgun to get you to slow down. The South. You would never get to that point with any other bike this size, 336 kilograms/740 pounds wet. It's just that this thing handles and hustles so much better than it has any right to. Weight is surprisingly well distributed. The only time you will notice it is when trying to duck-walk backward up a hill. But hey, guess what? BMW offers a reverse gear as an accessory. So, when onlookers describe the bike as big, you'll always think no, not really. Meanwhile, the dynamic electronic suspension adjustment feature provides hours and hours of fun in allowing you to change setups relatively quickly. Not only can you adjust according to the number of people and things the bike is hauling, for example, you and a passenger, you and luggage, etc., but according to the kind of ride you prefer. Ride mode offers a suspension firmness familiar to sport tourer and adventure sport riders, whereas cruise mode delivers the cushy feel more common on touring cruisers. Brakes are of a quality one would expect from a bike made in a country where you can legally go 154 miles per hour on the motorway. Thoughts the GT's top speed, apparently. One of the mojos claimed to have hit 130 on the B, but I'm sure he was fibbing because none of us would ever break the speed limit. The sudden appearance of a black bear on the Blue Ridge Parkway gave me an opportunity to learn the bike can be brought to a controlled stop very quickly. The K1600B's stylish seat looks more comfortable than it actually is. It's not awful. During some extended ride time, more on that in a moment. I put 400 miles on the clock in one day without complaint, but it's not as good as I would expect from a high-end brand. Additionally, I have a less sensitive keister than many folks,